Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Jameson Irvin from Duxbury, Vermont, and I'm going to share my perspectives from a local perspective and a global perspective. I have served on the Duxbury Select Board for 4 years, the Duxbury Planning Commission for 7 years, the Duxbury Land Trust for 9 years, Waterbury Local Energy Action Partnership for 8 years, and the Cross Boundary Conservation Collaboration Initiatives for another 4. So yes, I have 30 years of local conservation experience. I think H276 is a fabulous idea, and I want to tell you why in 3 reasons. The first is that it reduces the risks of flooding. 90% of Vermont state managed lands are in forested headwaters. 90%. This is where the bulk of them are. These are, according to a study that Agency of Natural Resources itself conducted, these are extremely important areas for flood protection, flood resilience. These help mitigate floods. They slow the water down. The intact soils absorb the water. Most logging plans on public lands would need to be, according to the report itself, significantly modified or reduced to meet the recommendations to reduce the risk of flooding. I don't know if I need to remind people that flooding is expected to cost Vermonters $5.2 billion at least. This was a report that came out in 2022 before the recent FEMA events. I won't say you could add another 0, but you could certainly double that. I don't know if let's see if this will work. This is just a little video here, 2 seconds. This is my neighbor's house during Irene. There we go. So this is just his house. This is a beautiful little brook, Ridley Brook, that ran through his yard, ran through his house. Duxbury itself was a major disaster site. More practically, this was 2 years ago. This is 2024, a FEMA flooding event. This is River Road in Duxbury. This is what we have to contend with on an every other year basis now. So we are, as a select board, really plagued by flooding events. In this context, the plans for logging are frankly absurd. So I show you here the state of Vermont. I show you the Camel's Hump Management Long Range Plan, and I show you the third screen, which is the logging plans slated for this area, 3,750 acres in these really important areas for flood control. These areas are next to roads. They're on steep areas. They are super critical for flood resilience. Duxbury has already had 3 FEMA events in 5 years. Our roads still have not recovered from Irene. We did a needs assessment based on Camel's Hump Road, where we have thousands of visitors, thousands coming up to climb Camel's Hump. Logging exacerbates risks. We're looking at a $4 million project just to repair Camel's Hump Road still. We just completed a Scrabble Hill slide repair that was $750,000. So road damage from flooding is extreme. And we're a small town. We're 1,200 people. I joined the select board 4 years ago because roads were something, not my passion, not my knowledge, but they're super critical. And the reason I'm leaving the select board, the reason I'm not running, is because I can't deal with the FEMA needs of road catastrophes and do my full-time work. It's a full-time job. And you see this across the state. Volunteer boards simply can't keep up with FEMA emergencies. And we know that FEMA itself is under question. Number 2, H276 reduces taxpayer burden. What do I mean? A couple of things. Logging in Camel's Hump State Park, as an example, in my backyard, will add what I call the 500 million pound gorilla in the room. One logging truck weighs about 100,000 pounds. We're looking at every acre being about 1.5 truckloads. So we're looking at 5,000 truckloads in one park of logs, 5,000 truckloads weighing 500 million pounds over the course of 15 years. So you can see the erosion that we're facing. These are from Duxbury in the last 2 years. We have culvert washouts, but also we have failing bridges and infrastructure. So you can go to the state site, look up Vermont Bridge 39 in Duxbury. You can say it says should be replaced as soon as possible. This logging truck just crossed it. You can see the cracks in the abutment. You can see the sagging road. You can see the rebar showing. You can see the, the cement breaking apart. Imagine hundreds, if not thousands of logging trucks going over this road. Who pays this burden? We as a town do. We as a state do. And town across. This is why H276 will avoid this problem. The third is a little bit difficult to articulate without more data. Through a Public Records Act, I looked at as many of the logging specs as I could. Where are the logs going? Well, frankly, they're going to Quebec. So the economic costs of logging far exceed the benefits to Vermonters and to ANR. It does not make economic sense to bring the kind of wood that they're bringing out, to build the kind of roads that they're building, which frankly are better than any of our town roads, and make a profit. A huge portion of the logs go directly to Quebec for processing in the form of pulp and chips and firewood. These are low-value products. Is this good for Vermont? I don't think so. But I also want to share my perspective from a global perspective. So what do I mean by this? For the better part of 30 years, I have worked for the United Nations Development Program. I'm into my 18th year. I've worked for the Nature Conservancy at a global level, for World Wildlife Fund. I was the first person the Forest Stewardship Council hired to set up standards of responsible logging worldwide. It's now responsible for 1 out of every 5 log that's harvested. And I'm not going to tell you how many years it took for me to do my PhD from UVM in land use planning. I'll just say it's an embarrassingly long time. So yes, I have 30 years of professional experience. What have I done? What do I have to show for myself for that experience? Basically, what I work with governments all around the world, I've worked with more than 100 governments directly, is to help them assess the effectiveness of their park systems, of their park design, help identify intact habitat, wildlife corridors, spatial linkages between nature, areas important for nature, and climate sequestration, identifying areas important to restore for nature in order to achieve national goals, and not just biodiversity goals, jobs, water security, livelihoods, protecting forests for water security, disaster risk reduction like floods, and assessing government policies. In my 30 years involved with hundreds of assessments with more than 100 governments, success boils down to one thing, and it's probably not what you're thinking. It's not resources. It's not capacity. It sort of is political will, but it's something even more foundational. It's policy alignment. If you imagine 2 people in a rowboat and one person's rowing this way and the other person's back rowing, you're going nowhere. And perhaps even worse, you've got one person facing forward and one person facing the other way, and you're going in circles. It's only when you align your policies that you move forward toward the ambitious goals. I've never been prouder to be a Vermonter in the last couple of years. And I can say with authority that we are setting a global standard with our policies that we've adopted, with the laws that we've adopted. It is, when you look at other countries around the world, and believe me, I work with many of them, the 30 by 30 law that we passed and the 50-50 inclusion, that is bar none in the top 5% of countries in terms of ambition. The climate commitment that we've made is outstanding. We face a global and a local biodiversity and climate crisis, which you've heard many testimonies about, but we're, I believe, at a crossroads for Vermont. We are not in policy alignment. We have, on the one hand, an agency that is cutting forests that will exacerbate flood risk, that will exacerbate our tax burden, and will increase risks to Vermonters. This is a before and after shot. This is before and after Marshall Road in Duxbury. These are older trees. They're not old growth, as you might think. They're not huge ones where you go and you feel this kind of, emotional, but they will be, would have been, had we let them grow old. So policy alignment is really important. And by that, I mean H276 will prevent habitat fragmentation, protect intact habitat, and ensure ecologically functional landscapes. It will do that. It will align our agencies and our policies to achieve that result. It will advance our climate goals in Vermont with H688. Vermont's forests offset 42% of our emissions and could offset 2.3 to 4.2% times more if they're just allowed to grow old. Every time we cut them, we set back the clock. H276 will protect endangered species, and here I'm speaking specifically of the lovely northern long-eared bat, whose habitat was just logged. So, do with that what we will. We are contributing to extinction in the state with our reckless absence of policy alignment. And finally, H276 is the primary instrument for ensuring success of Vermont Conservation by Design, Conservation Design and Act 59. In the absence of any other policy instrument, where are we going to put those 9%, 10% old forests? Private lands change hands on average every 7 years. People want to, hit the back 40 to pay for college, to pay for a new house, whatever they need to. Public lands are the only instrument that will safeguard these. I just want to conclude. I won't drone on, but I've chosen these 3 examples for a purpose, these 3 reasons. You're going to hear many stories from others. You're going to hear stories about why young forests are so important. Yes, young forests are important for some habitat, for some species. Should the state lands be the home for all the young forests? No, there are plenty of young forests. I saw 6 logging trucks on the way here. There's an active logging site going on in Duxbury that has about 200 acres in different patches. There is logging going on all over the state, and that is contributing to young forests, and that's part of a healthy matrix. But there are no other areas for old forests to persist. You're going to hear something like beyond the illusion of forest, that Vermont has a responsibility to produce its own wood. Yes, we do. We're producing 50% more than we consume. We're producing and we're sending it off to Quebec to be chipped. We're producing it, we're burning it in Burlington, which creates more emissions than fossil fuels. You're going to hear stories about climate resilience. I'm sure you heard from Danielle Fitzko, Commissioner Fitzko, saying we need climate resilience and we need climate resilient products. Well, chipping and shipping our forests out of the country and shipping them to Asia is not really climate. Is that really climate resilient? I think we really need to ask ourselves, are we in alignment with our big goals? The reality is that this is uncomfortable terrain, because we are a state that has had a deep and long and prideful history of logging, and rightfully so. But public lands has a new role because we're in a different time. So I could have chosen any other number of reasons. I could have talked about ticks and how logging increased ticks. And this is a deeply personal issue. My sister-in-law was bitten by a tick, has powassan, and has lost all of her short-term memory. Ticks will increase with logging. Invasive species, as Rick mentioned, will increase with logging. What happens? You lose the functional integrity of a forest when you start to have invasive species. I could have talked about water security. I think this is something we don't think about. Vermont is wet. It's wet all the time until this summer. Driest summer in decades, if not record. And then we started thinking about fire. And the logging increases the risk of fire. H276 is great for water security. We think about, I won't even start about rulemaking and the Agency of Natural Resources dragging its heels on that, but that is something also that this will obviate the need for rulemaking. This will be the rule. I just want to close. So H276 reduces flood risk. This is critical for communities across Vermont, and including my own. It is good business. It reduces the tax burden. I think what happens is that we get into this tautological argument of we need foresters so we can log, and we need to log so we can pay the foresters. Well, actually, we could think a little bit differently about what we do with our public lands. And we need policy alignment. If we're serious about achieving our goals, these amazing goals globally, then we need to align our policies. And H276 is the fastest way to do that. Because the moment that we're in of extended drought, unpredictable floods, FEMA irregularities, we don't know if there's going to be a FEMA. I don't know about you, but that's why I'm leaving the select board, is I don't know what FEMA's situation is going to be like. The tax environment for Vermonters and what we're subsidizing, and the nature climate crisis. For those reasons, I think that H276 is really important. I hope you do too. Thank you for your time. Questions?
Any questions for the presenter? Representative Boston.
We've heard really conflicting testimony about the use of old growth forest ponds, being, you know, what do you call it, storing
Carbon sequestration.
is carbon sequestration. We've heard conflicting data or testimony about young forest growth and old forest growth. And, you know, I'm just trying to figure out how to figure out whose data is correct.
I learned a great word this morning. If you follow Anugard, he said the word was agnotology. And this is producing agnostic material that's designed to create doubt. So it's like both sides of the coin, or science is not settled. The science is absolutely settled on this. Young forests do sequester carbon faster. Old forests sequester more carbon. So if someone tells you, oh, young forests are great at sequestering carbon, that's one part of the equation. But the equation you want to ask is, what about old forests? They are a monster at sequestering carbon. And some of the data from Keaton, Dr. Keaton at University of Vermont, says that if we just let forests grow old that we have now, they could sequester between 2.3 to 4.2 times more carbon than they're sequestering. Every time you knock it back to a young forest or an early successional stage, you're knocking back the carbon sequestration value.
I
Sir,
have a question for you. Two of those slides shows the trees on the left and the slash forest on the right. Was any of that land owned by the town of Duxbury?
no, this is public lands. This is Camel's Hump State Park.
State land?
This is state lands. This happened this summer. This is Marshall Road.
Well, that state land is supposed to be managed by state foresters, correct?
Yes.
And they allowed that, looks like about a 10-acre cut there, maybe smaller.
We estimate about, it's a big cut, and they're going back right now as we speak. They're there right now to expand it.
Oh, frozen ground, I can understand that. That land, if the foresters were on the ball, that's a prescribed cut. Did they take it, then that land is within the town of Duxbury, did they go to the select board and say prescribed cut with two, what?
You know, this is part of the frustration of serving on a select board, is that there's really very little you can do. So they said, we're going to be logging and we'll post the roads. They did have logging violations. We called them out on that, passing a school bus, for example. A select board does not have jurisdiction on state lands. This is state owned.
Right.
So the best we can do is say, by the way, we're picking up the tab for these bridges and roads. There's almost nothing as a select board that you can do. It's not our jurisdiction. In my personal capacity, again, very little one can do, but this is state-owned land. This is the first of, you can see all of the cuts happening planned.
Yeah, all of those cuts are on state-owned land.
Yes, this is the green is Camel's Hump State Park. And basically they're cutting everything they can cut. This is the existing plan. And it's replicated in the Worcester Range, it's replicated across Vermont. So whatever they can cut, they are cutting. And these are the precise areas you can see right above the roads. The precise area is important for flood control.
Thank
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Representative Boston.
What's the rationale for, cutting forest? I mean, does the town make money? Does the state make money? I mean, is it, you know, is the cost worth the benefit?
You know, this is, you just put your finger on the existential challenge that the Agency of Natural Resource has. Because in my mind and in my limited, I'm not a forester. I don't play one in real life, and I'm not a forest economist, but I do know logging a little bit from my experience, and I do know a little bit about the economy. There is no economic benefit. And I think what's happening here is you have foresters who are on staff for the Agency of Natural Resources. I know I'm veering a little bit here from fact to opinion, that they haven't met, you know, sort of like a cobbler looks at shoes and the tire person looks at your tires on a car, and a forester is going to be looking at the logs. We're sending pulp and chips to Quebec. That's what we're doing with those forests. those logs. I don't,
That doesn't help our economy.
I don't believe so. But that's my opinion. I don't have the economic data. What I can say is that certainly the town does not get any benefit. In fact, it's a net, it's a net loss in terms of roads, the road damage, the bridge damage, the time, the FEMA, all of it.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much for your testimony.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And any questions, feel free